A tax system reform could become the government's next tool to cool South Korea's housing market, with President Lee Jae-myung signaling potential changes at Tuesday's cabinet meeting. Korean lawmakers have voted to give special counsel investigators more time to continue their wide-ranging probe into former President Yoon Suk-yeol and former First Lady Kim Gun-hee. The conflict between the United States and Iran is intensifying, with Washington carrying out a 10th straight day of airstrikes and Tehran declaring what it calls an all-out war while stepping up its retaliation. At a cabinet meeting today, President Lee Jae-myung has signaled that tax changes could be part of his administration's latest effort to rein in Korea's overheated housing market. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yoo-jin starts us off.
With the government expected to unveil a new package of housing measures later this month, President Lee Jae-myung offered fresh clues about what could be included.
속도감 있는 공급 대책과 더불어서 현실에 부합하는 실수요자 지원 대책을 촘촘하게 마련하겠습니다. 조세 제도 역시 국민의 상식과 눈높이에 기초해서 공정하고 합리적으로 정비될 수 있게 하겠습니다.
Korea has been grappling with an overheated housing market driven by property speculation that has pushed prices in the capital region to record highs. What stood out on Tuesday was the president mentioning a tax system reform as a key solution. While the administration has so far focused on regulating multiple homeowners, the upcoming measures are expected to directly impact single homeowners. One option under consideration is raising taxes on what the government would classify as ultra-high value homes. Currently, single homeowners can receive the same maximum property tax deduction regardless of how much their property is worth. The proposal is expected to be discussed at a policy forum chaired by President Lee on Thursday before the government finalizes the measures. Also at Tuesday's cabinet meeting, Lee called for additional safeguards for single-stock leveraged exchange-traded funds tied to Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, which offer 2 times the stock's average daily return.
정책 당국 입장에서야 완벽하게 하는 게 어렵긴 했지만 어쨌든 신속하게 또 필요한 대응 조치는 좀 과감하게 하도록 하십시오.
Last week, financial authorities announced stronger investment rules for the products following steep losses since their launch in late May. The new rules triple the minimum deposit requirement to 30 million won, or roughly $20,000, all in cash. Whether it's housing or financial markets, President Lee is signaling that his administration is prepared to strengthen protection where it believes excessive speculation is putting ordinary people at risk. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Korea's exports during the first 20 days of July hit a record high for the period, driven by a powerful surge in semiconductor demand. Our Baek Ju-hee has the details.
Korea's exports during the first 20 days of July hit a record high for the period. The surging export value of semiconductors, which jumped nearly 2.8-fold from last year, led to overall export performance. According to preliminary data released by the Korea Customs Service on Tuesday, outbound shipments reached $54.9 billion. This marks a massive 52.3% surge compared to the same period last year, surpassing the previous record of 36.9 billion set in 2024. Daily average exports jumped 62.9% year-on-year to $3.79 billion, even with 1 working day fewer. Semiconductors accounted for 40.3% of Korea's total exports during this period, up 18.4 percentage points from a year ago. Chip exports soared 180.6% to $22.1 billion, benefiting from rising memory prices and robust demand for high-bandwidth memory and AI server SSDs. Exports of computer peripherals reached $2 billion, surging by 231.9%. By destination, shipments to major trade partners expanded across the board. Exports to China soared 94.1%, while shipments to the US, Vietnam, the EU, and Taiwan grew by double digits. The top 3 markets, China, the US, and Vietnam, accounted for over 50% of total exports. As a result, Korea posted a trade surplus of $12.2 billion for the 20-day period.
Strong semiconductor sales, mid 4% Chinese economic growth, and a stronger yuan are driving exports to China. Moving forward, it's likely that China's share in Korea's total exports will continue to rise.
However, experts warn that as Korea's export growth heavily relies on semiconductors, a reduction in tech investments driven by AI profitability concerns could directly hit the country's export performance.
However, the AI bubble debate in the U.S. remains a concern. If AI firms fail to deliver expected profits and cut spending, South Korea's semiconductor export growth is bound to slow down.
Meanwhile, imports also rose 20% to $42.7 billion, driven by higher purchases of chips, manufacturing equipment, and crude oil. 백주희, Arirang News.
The South Korean government says the country's crude oil supply is covered through September amid increasing tensions in the Middle East. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said Tuesday that South Korea has secured crude oil imports for July and August at more than 110% of last year's average, while September imports have steadily risen to more than 90% of the level recorded last year. As the Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen are threatening to block the Red Sea gateway, the ministry said it's monitoring the situation, but the vessels may have to take alternative routes if that route is blocked. The United States is expected to announce Section 301 tariffs soon as the temporary 10% global tariff expires, putting the Korea-U.S. tariff agreement to its first major test. Lee Ju-yeon has more.
The 10% global tariff under Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974, imposed by the Trump administration, is set to expire in just a few days on July 24th. To replace these tariffs, the administration is expected to soon roll out new tariffs under Section 301.
And we're also initiating several Section 301 and other investigations to protect our country from unfair trading practices of other countries and companies.
Section 301 authorizes the executive branch to respond to unfair or discriminatory practices and policies by foreign governments, including through the imposition of tariffs. The Office of the United States Trade Representative has been leveraging Section 301 since last March to investigate various countries on two main fronts: overproduction and forced labor. Korea could be subject to Section 301 action on both these issues. The USTR concluded that Seoul was among the countries that failed to effectively block imports of goods produced through forced labor. This could see Seoul face 10 to 12.5% tariffs. Meanwhile, no specific tariff plan has been announced for overproduction. Once the overproduction tariffs are finalized, they will be combined with the forced labor tariffs. Korea has already agreed to a 15% tariff rate under a trade deal with the United States. The key issue now is whether this 15% agreement will be maintained. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer has publicly stated early last month that the U.S. intends to respect existing tariff caps and deals. However, exactly how the 15% cap will be maintained remains uncertain. With Section 301 investigation still ongoing, all eyes are on how the 15% limit can be upheld once the 10% global tariffs expires. Lee Ju-yeon, Arirang News.
Political deadlock overshadowed July's extraordinary National Assembly session, with the main opposition launching a filibuster during Monday's plenary meeting. Now, after 24 hours, the Assembly voted on the proposed amendment. For more on the details, we turn to our political correspondent An Sung-jin here in the studio. Welcome, Sung-jin.
Thanks for having me, Dami.
So, Sung-jin, following the opposition filibuster, how has the voting process ended? Tell us.
Right, so Korea's National Assembly has approved an amendment extending the mandate of a special counsel investigating former President Yoon Suk-yeol and former First Lady Kim Gon-hee on allegations of insurrection and abuse of power.
With all 173 members present voting in favor, I hereby declare the amendment has been passed.
Now, the amendment was proposed by the ruling Democratic Party during a plenary session and passed with all 173 lawmakers present voting in favor, and lawmakers from the main opposition People Power Party boycotting the vote. Now, the vote came after the People Power Party staged a 24-hour filibuster, arguing the bill was politically motivated and intended to suppress the opposition.
Once again, they're asking for more time. If that's the case, they should clearly explain why. Instead, they're giving the same reasons. If it keeps being extended, can this still be called a special investigation?
At around 3:30 p.m. today afternoon, lawmakers voted to end the filibuster with the required 3/5 majority, clearing the way for a final vote on the legislation.
The special counsel has faced limits in both time and manpower. That's why we're proposing this amendment, to extend the investigation, expand its scope, and increase staffing so the probe can be carried out thoroughly.
Following the passing at the Assembly on the same day, the amendment was approved at the extraordinary cabinet meeting.
Then Sung-jin, what exactly does the amendment entail? Give us the details.
Right, so the probe launched in February and has already received 2 extensions under the existing bill. Now, the bill would allow the special counsel investigation to continue for an additional 30 days, extending the deadline from July 24th to August 23rd. Now, the proposed bill would expand the number of seconded government officials supporting the investigation from 130 to 150, add obstruction of government audits to a list of prosecutable offenses, and authorize the appointment of dedicated prosecutors to handle cases brought by the special counsel in court. Now, with the amendment now approved, the special counsel's investigation will continue under an extended mandate as the high-profile probe moves forward.
And also, Sung-jin, this morning, the government and the ruling party discussed the plans for the 2027 budget plans. And now, what was discussed there?
Exactly. At a party government policy meeting on Tuesday morning at the National Assembly, the ruling party stated that it's going to reinvest additional tax revenue generated by the semiconductor boom and restructure government spending.
The 2027 budget must serve as a catalyst for securing Korea's future. Bold and strategic investment is needed to accelerate the government's 3 major mega projects, alongside stronger support for regional-led growth and local economies.
Both the government and ruling party agreed to incorporate the party's input into the budget before the final proposal is set, ensuring that key policy initiatives and local election pledges are well reflected.
Last but not least, Sung-jin, there has been an agreement about the investigation into the ballot paper shortage for the June 3rd local elections. Tell us more about that.
Right, so the 2 main political parties agreed to launch a special counsel investigation into the ballot paper shortage. The DP and PPP announced on Tuesday that they will be passing the bill during July's extraordinary session, and in weeks of disagreement on how the special counsel should nominate the counsel. A jointly formed committee will recommend 2 candidates, with the president appointing one to lead the probe. The parties will negotiate the investigation scope later, with the deal also raising hopes for stalled talks on parliamentary committee appointments.
Well, another busy week at the National Assembly. Sung-jin, thanks for coming in tonight.
My pleasure, as always.
U.S. President Donald Trump has issued another warning to Iran, while Tehran says it's in a full-scale war with Washington. Yet both sides are reviewing a 10-day ceasefire proposal from regional mediators. Kim Jun-hong has this report.
U.S. President Donald Trump vowed that Iran would pay many times over for the deaths of American soldiers. The warning came hours after he said the latest U.S. strikes on Iran were carried out in honor of 3 troops recently killed in Jordan and Iraq. The warning comes as the U.S. military launched a new round of airstrikes against Iran on the same day, marking the 10th consecutive night of U.S. airstrikes targeting Iran. U.S. Central Command said on its X account that the new strikes began at 4 p.m. Eastern Time under the direct orders of President Trump. CENTCOM said the strikes targeted Iranian military and communication sites to further weaken Iran's attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran said it had hit sites in Bahrain and Syria and also targeted U.S. aircraft in Jordan. Later, the Iranian president described the recent confrontation with Washington as a full-scale war. He said that Iran is fighting a war that is not fought solely with missiles, and added that it will continue to fight to defend its national interests until the very end. Meanwhile, diplomatic contacts are continuing by both sides through mediators despite the risk of wider war. Axios reported that Qatar, Egypt, Pakistan, and other countries have proposed a 10-day ceasefire to Washington and Tehran. The pause would allow the U.S. and Iran to negotiate a longer-term arrangement for passage through the strait. Options under discussion include allowing Iran to collect reasonable maritime security fees or placing the payments in a joint fund involving the International Maritime Organization. A senior U.S. official confirmed that talks remain underway, but said Trump has not yet finished retaliating. Yet Washington is simultaneously preparing for the talks to fail, with the U.S. military deploying dozens of fighter jets and refueling aircraft to the region in recent days. The State Department has also issued a travel advisory for U.S. citizens in the Middle East, citing heightened regional tensions. Kim Jun-ho, Arirang News.
North Korea and Russia are reinforcing their strategic partnership, with the top diplomats from the two countries meeting in Moscow to pledge deeper collaboration and mutual support. Kim Do-yeon reports.
During their third strategic dialogue in Moscow on Monday local time, North Korean Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov focused on implementing the comprehensive strategic partnership signed by their leaders in June 2024. By explicitly numbering the dialogue, the two nations signal a clear intent to regularize and institutionalize this diplomatic channel.
Today, our task, dear Comrade Minister, is to see what additional impetus we can give to cooperation, both through bilateral channels and in relation to issues of regional and international security.
Under Article 4 of their 2024 Security Pact, the agreement includes a mutual defense clause requiring both sides to provide immediate military and other assistance if either comes under attack. Beyond wartime support, the framework expands cooperation into economic ties, science, and technology, effectively laying a practical legal foundation for long-term military technical exchange.
From North Korea's perspective, they need to strengthen Pyongyang-Beijing-Moscow solidarity to counter South Korea-U.S. Japan cooperation, aiming to play a central role. Furthermore, in exchange for their troop deployment, they will likely demand that Russia speed up the transfer of advanced military technology and provide economic cooperation.
The two sides also emphasize the UN Charter's principles of sovereign equality and non-interference. This is widely viewed as groundwork for a joint strategy to push for the neutralization of international sanctions against North Korea at the upcoming UN General Assembly in September. By solidifying ties with Moscow, Pyongyang aims to elevate its strategic position. Instead of participating in multilateral forums where it faces persistent denuclearization demands, North Korea is actively positioning itself as a frontline actor against democratic alliances. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Daejeon has been selected to host the 2029 Invictus Games, becoming the first Asian city to stage the international sporting event for wounded service members. Now, the historic decision is raising expectations for Korea to expand the Games' presence across Asia. Park Kwon-woo has more.
For the first time, the Invictus Games are coming to Asia. The Korean central city of Daejeon secured the right to host the 2029 Games after winning a unanimous vote over San Diego in the US and Aalborg, Denmark. Evaluators credited Korea's closely coordinated effort between the central government, local authorities, and the veteran community united behind one mission: helping wounded service members recover and rebuild their lives.
When I competed, I had to go all the way to Germany, so it's meaningful that Korea will now be able to welcome athletes. I hope it helps more people recognize how veterans are honored here. After being injured, many service members feel like their lives are over, but I eventually realized it wasn't the end, but the beginning.
Founded by the UK's Prince Harry in 2014, the Invictus Games use sport to support the physical, psychological, and social recovery of wounded service members. And the Daejeon Games will mark its 9th edition. But despite its growing global reach, South Korea remains the only Asian country participating so far. The foundation believes hosting the Games in Korea could encourage more Asian nations to join.
Within the Asian context, it's the fact that there is a lot of conflict going on and a lot of veterans around that aren't necessarily getting the respect and treatment. The great determination would be that we help change attitudes across Asia as well. I know there will be millions of people in Asia will be watching the Games in Daejeon.
The 2029 Games are expected to draw thousands of athletes, families, and supporters from 26 countries. Among the participating nations are 12 countries that fought alongside South Korea or provided medical support during the Korean War, including the US, Australia, and Colombia. Daejeon is also stepping up preparations to ensure the Games are a success.
We're expecting around 3,000 athletes and family members. We'll carefully prepare every aspect from sports venues to accommodation to ensure the Games are a success. With our experience hosting a major international event recently, we're confident.
The countdown has already begun, and in 2029, Daejeon will become the first Asian city to host the Invictus Games, showing how sport can help wounded service members recover and rebuild their lives. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News, Daejeon.
South Korea is hosting the World Heritage Committee for the first time, marking a new chapter in its role within UNESCO. In an exclusive interview with Arirang News, Korean National Commission for UNESCO Secretary General Hong Hyun-ik says the meeting reflects Korea's growing leadership. Our culture correspondent Jung Hae-rin sat down with him.
For nearly 4 decades since joining the World Heritage Convention, South Korea has participated as one of its members. The Korean National Commission for UNESCO serves as the country's official liaison to the UN agency, helping coordinate Korea's participation in UNESCO initiatives. And Secretary General Hong Hyun-ik says hosting this year's committee marks a turning point.
Until now, Korea has participated as a member of the system, but by hosting this committee, Korea has reached a position where it helps set agendas, shape policies, and assume greater responsibility for World Heritage.
Hong says the meeting also puts the spotlight on Busan as the city seeks UNESCO World Heritage status for its wartime capital heritage. He says Korea's growing role also brings new responsibilities.
사무총장님께서 지난 3월에 취임하시면서 취임사에서 AI와 생명과학 등 첨단 기술의 발전과 기후변화 속에서 한국이 글로벌 의제 및 국제 규범 형성에 적극 참여하겠다라고 밝히셨습니다. 그럼 이번 부산 총회에서 다뤄질 핵심 의제 중에서 유네스코 한국위원회가 특히 주목하거나 주도하고 있는 의제가 있다면 혹시 한 말씀 부탁드립니다.
Heritage comes from the past, but the responsibility for protecting, managing and interpreting it belongs to both the present generation and those who will inherit it. That's why we brought together young heritage professionals from more than 30 countries to discuss the future of World Heritage.
Hong says another priority is ensuring that rapidly advancing digital technologies are used responsibly in heritage conservation.
Digital technology can help record, monitor, interpret and manage heritage and is useful in education as well, but it can also distort heritage if misused. We hope to help lead discussions on how these technologies can be used responsibly to strengthen heritage protection while reflecting heritage values and the voices of local communities.
Hong says protecting the existing World Heritage sites is just as important as adding new ones. He believes this year's Busan Declaration, in which the Commission played a significant role in drafting, reflects that broader commitment, setting out a shared vision for tackling the challenges facing World Heritage. Jung Hae-rin, Arirang News.
The rain band that brought heavy downpours to the central regions has mostly moved away. Right now, we're just seeing a few light rain here and there. But the rain band will quickly redevelop, bringing another round of heavy rain to the central regions. Tomorrow, 5 to 60 millimeters of rain is on the way for many parts of the country. With repeated rounds of rain, the ground is already saturated, so the risk of landslides remains high. So it's best to stay away from mountainsides and other vulnerable areas. Meanwhile, farther south, plenty of sunshine has pushed temperatures much higher today. Heat alerts are still in effect across parts of the southern regions. Temperatures climbed as high as 35 degrees Celsius in some areas today, and even after sunset, they won't cool off much, bringing another round of tropical nights. For the rest of the week, the seasonal rain front will continue shifting north and south, bringing periods of rain on and off nationwide. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
That's all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.